Vegas. As Speaker of the House, Jamie works directly with CEO Tony Hsieh, focusing on the culture of which the company has become known. Her role is essential in creating and driving the architecture of dynamic culture, as well as focusing on culture and R&D to ensure Zappos.com remains relevant to both employees and their customers. Jamie travels the country to work with world-renowned companies, authors, researchers, and business leaders to help spread the concept that by focusing your employees and customers, good companies can become legendary companies. And I had brought Jamie out a few years ago to talk to my company, Cybercoders, and it's really amazing what she's done and Zappos has done. So I'm going to hand it over to Jamie now.
Thank you, guys. Well, I can't see you, so feel free to make faces at me here, do whatever, because I won't be aware of it. But thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm going to flip to the next slide, and we'll go ahead and get started. Just talk a little bit about what I do. I've been with Zappos for 9 years. I focus primarily in 3 different areas: culture, always being first and foremost; R&D, which is research and development as it relates to our culture, and that's where I go and meet with lots of different companies. And I have a friend who says R&D really stands for rip off and duplicate, and that's what I do. Go to companies, steal a bunch of ideas. Hopefully they're stealing some from us and making it fit into our organization. And I'll be telling you about some of the stuff we do at Zappos that we've taken from other companies. They've allowed us to take it from them. And then most recently, community. So about 3.5 years ago, we announced that we were relocating from Henderson, Nevada to downtown Las Vegas. And some of you may have heard about our CEO Tony Hsieh's other company called Downtown Project, which is a $350 million investment fund geared towards revitalizing the downtown area. So with Zappos' move into the urban core, we've really added community as one of our one of our C's, as we call it, and have put a huge focus on making sure that we integrate with the businesses in the area and that our employees are integrated as well. So next slide. So Zappos, we like to say that we're a service company that just happens to sell shoes, clothing, handbags, accessories. We sell housewares and even beauty products now. But at our core, we really, truly believe that we are a customer service company. And we believe that if you get service right, that it doesn't matter what you sell, that your customers will continue to come back to you and buy whatever products you have available. Next slide. We've been rated one of the 100 best companies to work for. I believe this is our 6th year on the list. We've been all over as high as number 6. This year we were number 38, and of course always an honor to get on the list. We're always striving to do better, so maybe one day you'll see us in the top spot. Next slide. So as I mentioned, our headquarters is located in downtown Las Vegas. That's actually a picture of our building. It was formerly the Las Vegas City Hall, and it's where our city did all of its business for 40 years. We purchased the building and did about $60 million in renovation. The building was originally built to seat 600 city employees, and we've fit 2,000 Zappos employees in the same exact footprint. So we definitely don't have offices or anything like that, so we get a lot more use out of the space. Our fulfillment was always done out of Shepherdsville, Kentucky, but most recently we've moved over to the Amazon network. So now our fulfillment is done actually nationwide through Amazon's network of warehouses. And we have about 1,500 employees. 98% of those are right here in Las Vegas. We have a small innovation office in the Bay Area, and then a few employees still in Kentucky who work at our outlet store. Next slide. This is what our warehouse looks like. It's 3 floors, 3 stories, floor to ceiling shoes. And we have 1,000 different brands, 200,000 different styles, and we actually have 6 million items in our warehouse. 100% of all of our product is inventoried, and we run a live inventory system, which means if you can put it on in your cart, you can actually get it to your house. We don't do drop shipments, so you're never going to get an email from us saying, sorry, the item you tried to order is no longer available. Next slide. So again, we're all about customer service, and what our customers see first when they come to our website is hopefully they're going to notice that we have our 1-800 number on every single page of our website. So I'm sure most of you have done online shopping. If you've ever tried to call customer support, you know that it can sometimes be a trying experience. You have to dig and dig and dig to find a phone number for the company. Well, at Zappos, we thought that was one of those things that just seemed crazy, that if your customers want to talk to you, why wouldn't you want to talk to them? So we decided that we put our 800 number on every single page of our website, and then to back it up, we keep our call center open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you want to talk about shoes at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're here for you. If you want to talk about shoes at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're also here for you. We do free shipping, free return shipping on every product that we sell. So if the product doesn't fit or for some reason you don't like it, you can return it and there's no charge to you whatsoever. And then we back that up with a 365-day return policy. So as long as you return it in new condition, we will take it back up to a full year after you have purchased it. Next slide. Some of what our customers experience, well, they're going to experience fast, accurate fulfillment. So we run our warehouses 24 hours a day as well to make sure that the product gets out to the customers as fast as possible. We're known for our surprise upgrades. So we tell our customers that they'll receive their product at no charge within 3 to 5 business days, but the majority of our product actually goes out overnight. So it's not unheard of for customers in some parts of the country to order as late as 10 o'clock at night and receive their product at no shipping costs as early as 10 o'clock the next morning. And if you call our call center and you're looking for something and maybe we don't sell that product or we no longer have the size you're looking for, all of our call center reps are trained to stay on the line with you and actually search up to 5 competitors' websites to find that product for you. If we find the product on one of our competitors' websites, we direct the customer to that website to purchase their product. And for us, it's not about maximizing every interaction in terms of dollars with our customers. It's about maximizing every single interaction with our customers in terms of loyalty, in terms of service. So we know that we're going to lose the sale this time, and that our competitor is going to gain the sale. But we hope that you'll remember the experience. Not only will you remember it, but you might tell your friends about how we were crazy enough to send you to one of our competitors. And then when you do need a product that we have, you'll come back and purchase it from us. Next slide. All right, so what we do internally. In our call center, we have no call times and no sales goals. If you've ever called a call center, maybe your credit card, your bank, even the cable company, if you ever felt like you were being rushed off the phone, it's probably because you were. Most call centers work on a standard metric, and it's how quickly the employee can get the customer off the phone. So the employee's ability to keep their job depends on how quickly they can get you to hang up on the call. For us, that was, again, one of the things that sounded crazy. Like, who are we to decide what the average length of a call is to provide great customer service? Some calls take 5 minutes, and some calls take 30 minutes. Our longest call on record is well over 8 hours long. So it's 8 hours of continuous talk time, and the interesting thing is if you come through the Zappos office and you ask any employee what the longest call on record is, you'll get a slew of different answers: 8 hours, 8.5 hours, 9 hours. But you'd be hard pressed to find one employee who could tell you if that call even resulted in a sale. Because again, our call center is all about customer service. It's not about selling the customer. At Zappos, we don't do performance reviews, we do culture reviews. So every year, we do a 360-degree culture review where the review is sent out to your coworkers, your supervisors, and then you get to select also a number of people that you'd like to send it to, and everybody's rating you based on our 10 core values, not how well you're excelling at your job, but how well you really fit into our culture. For us, we feel that performance is something that shouldn't wait a full year to talk about with your employees, that heaven forbid you sit down with your boss and after a year you're told you're doing a really bad job, or even worse, you wait a full year to hear that you're doing a really good job. So at Zappos, it is a requirement that we talk to our team about performance every single week, if not more than once a week. Some other stuff that we do 4 weeks of training for every single employee that enters the headquarters in Las Vegas. So whether you take a job as a developer or as the CEO, every single employee starts day one in 4 weeks of call center training. So 100% of our team is fully trained in how to be a call center representative. They spend 2 weeks in a classroom learning how to work our phones, learning our history, our philosophies, and then we send them out to the floor and they spend a full 80 hours actually taking phone calls from our customers. And the reason we do that is we really believe that if your company is going to be about customer service, it has to be about more than just your customer service department. That every department within the organization has to really live and breathe a customer service philosophy. So how our call center interacts with our customers is just as important as how our buyers interact with our vendors, or how our finance team interacts with the people that we're paying. And then to back it up, every employee during the holidays is required to spend an additional 10 hours on the phone taking calls from customers. So every holiday season, if you call, you are more likely to get a non-trained, like non-full-time call center employee than you are to get, a developer or someone like me. Sometimes you'll get Tony on the phone. He does the 10 hours as well. Next slide. Some things we do internally, we offer our employees money to quit. I heard that our program recently changed, but how it's worked in the past is we would sit you down at the end of the second week of training and we would say, we spent a really long time trying to figure out if you were right for Zappos. And now we want to know, is Zappos right for you? And if it's not, it's okay. We're going to go ahead and give you $2,000 to leave the company today. And $2,000 may or may not sound like a lot of money to you, but our average new hire is entry level. They're making anywhere from $11 to $13 an hour, so $2,000 is a considerable amount of money. If they say no to that, we sit them down again at the end of 4 weeks of training, and we offer them $3,000. If they say no to that, we sit them down again at the end of 6 weeks, so now they have 2 weeks in their real department, whatever department they were hired to work in, and we offer them $4,000 to leave. After that offer, they're stuck with us if they say no. We publish a culture book every single year, and it basically asks one question to all of our employees. It asks, what does Zappos culture mean to you? And employees respond in paragraph form, and we are allowed to be anonymous if we want, or we can have our name and department associated with it. And then we publish this book completely unedited except for spelling errors. So it is, if you ever get a chance to read this book or look through it, what you get is the good, the bad, and even a little bit of ugly, I guess you could say, from our employees. So we're not perfect, just like any company, and we commit to transparency through our culture book by not editing any of the submissions. Another thing we do is our interviews are based on culture. So when you meet with our HR team, their sole job is to decide, are you a culture fit for our organization? It is the hiring manager's responsibility to decide if you have the skills to do the job and if you are a culture fit for their specific department. If HR deems that you are not a culture fit for the organization, you're pretty much dead in the water. There is nothing anyone can do to override that decision. And on the same hand, there is not one employee in the organization that can force a hire. So if our CEO went to HR and said, I want you to hire this person, they're going to have to go through the same steps, meet with several people. Everyone's going to have to say that they're a culture fit before they get offered a job. Next slide. I don't know how many of you are familiar with NPS scores, but basically NPS stands for Net Promoter Score, and it's a certain type of equation you use to determine how well you're doing on what is called the ultimate question. And the ultimate question is based on your recent experience, how likely would you be to recommend us to a friend or a family member? The average company, I believe, ranks somewhere in the 70%, or sorry, a good company would rank somewhere in the 70%, and if you hit next on the slide, you'll see that we are trending at just around 93%. There we go. All right. Another question we asked, if you go to the next slide, this is one of my favorite questions. If you started your own company, how likely would you be to hire the team member who assisted you today? So for Zappos, if you want to actively steal our employees, then we are hiring and keeping the right people in our organization. And so on this question, we trend right at 92%. You can hit next on that. So we feel pretty good about that. All right, next slide. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about what we call the 7 steps to building a brand that matters. This is the steps that we went through in the history of our organization and kind of what we've learned along the way if you're trying to build a brand. So step number 1, if you hit next slide. Step number 1 is to really decide if you're trying to build a long-term sustainable brand. Some people create companies and they have an exit strategy right from the beginning. They're just trying to grow it as quickly as possible and sell it as quickly as possible. And if that is your strategy, then maybe these steps aren't the right steps for you. But if you're trying to build a sustainable brand, a brand that is loved by not only your employees but by your customers as well, we say decide soon and decide really early. And remember that it requires a lot of patience with your revenues and profits in order to lay a proper foundation. Zappos was not profitable for 7 years, so it took 7 years for us to make our first amount of profit, and during those 7 years that we weren't making profit, we were still focusing very heavily and taking a lot of our money, investing it right back into our brand, right back into our employees, and making sure that they were well taken care of, and setting up this culture that we become known for. Step number 2, go to the next slide, is to figure out your values and your culture. And we'll move right along to the next slide. So when Zappos did this, it was pretty late in the game. We didn't really formalize our values until 2005, 2006. So we were about 6-7 years in. And if you don't know much about our CEO, Tony, he actually created his first company right out of college. It was called Link Exchange, and he sold it to Microsoft for $265 million. And what a lot of people don't know is that the only reason he sold it was because he woke up one day and realized he didn't want to go to work. And it wasn't that he didn't like what he was doing, but he really didn't like the people he worked with anymore. And when he was early on, he realized you can hire your friends and friends of friends, and everybody knew somebody, and that's how you got people into the organization. And so you made sure that everybody was a fit just out of the people you hang out with. But as they grew, and they grew to about 100 employees, what he realized is they had spent too much time paying too much attention to resumes and not enough time paying attention to personalities. So they ended up with 100 very talented people, but 100 people that nobody wanted to be around. So he was approached by Microsoft and ended up selling it. He also had a retention contract and walked away. He had to stay on for a year, and I think it was something around he would get an extra $40 million, and he left his contract early. That was how much he didn't want to work there. So now skip to 2005, we're at Zappos, and he sees the same thing happening here. We were around 300 employees. We were growing very rapidly, bringing on about 80 people a pay period, and he thought to himself, like, if we don't get this under control now, we are going to lose the culture we've worked so hard to build. So he sat down and he really thought about what his personal values were. And then he looked around and he said, who are the best employees at Zappos and what do I like about them so much? And he came up with a list of about 37 different traits, things like they're funny, they're passionate, they're weird, or whatever it was. And he sent that out to employees and he said, it's time for us to create core values. And what do you think of this list? Is there something I'm missing? Is there stuff on here that doesn't ring true to you? And it took about a year back and forth between employees and upper management before we came down to the values that we have today. And what we learned during the process and what we've learned from numerous books and research that we've done is it really doesn't matter what your values are. It matters that you're committed to them, and it matters that the entire organization is fully aligned with them. And we'll go to the next slide and I'll show you what the 10 core values are. Number 1 is deliver well through service, all the way to number 10, which is be humble. We get the most attention for number 3, which is create fun and a little weirdness. We actually have an interview question. It's on a scale of 1 to 10. How weird do you consider yourself? And for us, weird is about being authentic, and weird is about bringing your true self to work every day. And that's truly what we mean about alignment in your values, that the people that you hire have to hold these values in their home life just as much as they do in their work life, so that the same person they are at home is the same person they are at the office. Next slide. So step number 3 is to commit to transparency. And remember that your culture is your brand, and that don't try to be something that you're not. And some examples of how Zappos commits to transparency, we'll move to the next slide. We have an Ask Anything newsletter that employees can ask literally any question they want. It's completely anonymous. When they ask the question, it is sent to HR. It's scrubbed for any identifying information, and then it's forwarded on to the department head who would be responsible for whatever that question is. Once a department head responds, we put it together in a newsletter and send it out to all employees for them to read. So we've made a commitment that no matter what the question is, that we are going to answer it. Most of the time, we get really benign questions like, why aren't there any peanut M&Ms in the vending machine? And head of facilities will say, that's a really good question, and I'll make sure that I mix it up a little bit and put M&Ms, peanut M&Ms in the vending machine. But sometimes we're being asked really hard questions. One time we had an employee who thought it was appropriate to call out not just one, but about 3 of their supervisors in the Ask Anything newsletter. So he or she called them out by name, wrote exactly what their complaints were about the supervisor, and sent it on its way. And this was a really hard thing for us to do. And how do you throw that out there for every employee to read by name who these supervisors were and what they were accused of by this employee? But we did it. We formulated a response. We notified the supervisors that it was going to happen, and we sent it out for all the employees to learn from. Another thing that we've done that people have told us we were crazy for, it's worked out pretty well for us, is we created an extranet for vendors. So in a traditional business, you have a love-hate relationship with your vendors. It's all about, getting every nickel or every dime you can out of them. And for Zappos, we wanted to create a love-love relationship with our vendors. So we decided we would create an extranet and give them access to the back end of our website so they could see a lot of different metrics that most retailers do not give their vendors. So they could see exactly what products of theirs were selling, how quickly they were selling, did we have to mark them down, were we able to sell them at full retail price. They could even initiate POs on our behalf, so they could submit a PO and say, hey Zappos, you should order more of this product because I can see you're getting low on it. And to us, this made perfect sense because we have 1,000 different vendors, and they're in the business of selling shoes, and we're in the business of selling shoes. So if we work together, then maybe we could sell more shoes. And so now we have 1,000 vendors who have eyes on our business every single day, are helping to create strategies and make sure we have the product we need when our customers want it. And it's 1,000 set of eyes that are on our business, driving our business forward every single day, that are not actually on our payroll. So it's worked out really well for us. Another thing that we do in a normal company, if a reporter wants to write an article, you sit them in the room with your PR person, and that PR person gives like very specific sound bites that this is how I want to be quoted, this is what the company stands for, and the reporter writes their story. And at Zappos, what we do is we allow reporters full access. So we say, talk to any employee that you want to, ask any questions that you want to. And the reason we do this is we feel that if you're only keeping employees that are good for your business, you don't have to worry about what they're saying to reporters. And Zappos, we get a lot of attention, so there's always somebody writing an article about us. But in the real world, and how this shows up in every business across the country, I think, is through social media. So companies create all these policies to prevent their employees from saying things on Facebook or on Twitter, or whatever it may be. And at Zappos, we believe that, again, if you're only keeping the employees that are good for your business, you don't have to censor what they're saying on social media. And then we also do tours, so about 30,000 people a year come through the Zappos offices just to see our work environment and hear about our culture and see it firsthand. And at the end of my presentation, I'll let you know how you can do that as well. Next slide. Step number 4 is vision. Whatever you're thinking, think bigger. And we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll show you, this is the evolution of the Zappos vision. So when our company was created, we had a really simple vision. We wanted to have the best selection of shoes online. There was only one problem with that, and that was that nobody would actually sell us shoes. So this was 1999 when we created our company, and most of the shoe industry thought that we were absolutely insane, that nobody would buy shoes online. So in the beginning, actually, what our founder did is we happened to set up our office next door to a shoe store, and he worked out a deal with the owner of the shoe store, and he would take pictures of the guy's product and post it to our website. And when a customer would place an order, he would run next door, buy the shoes, and then ship them off to the customer. And that is literally how we attempted to prove that we had a viable business plan. So, being that we couldn't be about the best selection of shoes, we had to be about something, and that's when we changed and decided we were going to be about providing the best customer service. That was a time where we stopped doing all types of drop shipment, which is about 40% of our business. We also created the free shipping, free return shipping, things of that nature. Once we mastered customer service, we moved on to culture and values as our platform, and then finally we've evolved into being just about to deliver happiness. That it's pretty broad, and we think it sums up our company well. So next slide. We meet a lot of entrepreneurs, and we get asked a lot of questions, especially Tony gets asked a lot of questions about what is the next best thing. And what he would say, and what most employees at Zappos would say, is to an entrepreneur, what would you be passionate about doing for 10 years, even if you never made a dime? Because it's really the passion that's going to get you through the hard times. So for Tony, his passion is definitely not shoes. His passion was about proving that culture could be sustainable. And that's why he took on Zappos and really worked hard to create this organization. And obviously, this is public information, but our CEO makes $36,000 a year, and since we've been acquired by Amazon, has no interest in the organization financially other than that $36,000 a year. So he doesn't get bonuses or anything like that. And if you ask him why, he will say if he's working, he's got plenty of money, and if he's working for money, then he needs to find another job. All right, on to the next slide. For employees, if you have a team or building a team, or one day hope to have a team, what we say to managers is, what is your employee, what's a larger vision and greater purpose in their work beyond just money or profits? Because if we're honest with ourselves, most of our employees are not making much money. Most of them have very little access to our profits. So what keeps employees coming to work every day outside of that paycheck? And for Zappos, that is about finding purpose and passion, and we want to make sure that all of our employees have that. Next slide. And so again, for us, it comes down to motivation versus inspiration. And throughout the years, people have come up with a lot of different ways to motivate their team, and most of you have probably worked for different managers who motivated in different ways. Some people motivate through fear. If you don't do this, you'll get fired. Some of us motivate through incentives. If you do this, I will give you that. And these are all proven methods, that they're proven to work, and they're proven to work really well, but they're proven to work only in the short term and only while the supervisor is in the office. So Zappos, we wanted to be about more than motivation. We wanted to be about inspiration. And the inspiration, it looks very different. It's when your employees are helping to build your company and not looking at their job description. They're not saying, am I being paid to do this? Or this isn't my job, this is Joe's job. And they're just working hard to make sure that the company is successful. And if you go to any, like a local bar on a Saturday night and you run into Zappos employees, in between conversation of, baseball and news, you're going to hear them talk about their ideas to help move our company forward. Next slide. Step number 5 is to build relationships. We have a lot of different ways that we do that at Zappos. If we move to the next slide, we have something here that we call PEC, which is personal emotional connection. And what this means to us is personal emotional connection is how you are connecting with your employees outside of the work that they do for you. So how do you really know them outside of their job description? And then PEC to customers is how do you know your customers outside of the products that they buy? So when you call our call center, our reps are trained to really connect with you on a human level, not off of the fact that you wear a size 10 and prefer brown leather boots. And then on the manager side, the pictures that I have on my slide, that is our CEO, Tony. And the first picture is him, that's him holding my daughter. That was the first time she made an appearance at Zappos. She was 3 weeks old. She is now like 8.5, so it was quite a while ago. And then the other picture is a more updated picture of him with my daughter. And so Tony, being my boss, is connected with me in many different ways, but one of the ways is through my child, and he makes sure he knows what's going on with her and how she's doing in school and what's interesting to her. Tony and I happen to live next door to each other, and he gets a lot of interesting visitors, so he has a tendency to knock on my door unannounced and have random celebrities standing there. So my daughter thinks she's a rock star, and he knows that, so it works out well for us. Next slide. Wishes is a program that we actually, when I was telling you about rip off and duplicate, we came across this article about this company who did something similar. They were a really small company, about 30 employees. So we took the idea and scaled it so that it would work for our 1,500 employees and came up with the Wishes program. What it is it allows any employee to make a wish based off of anything. And they put their wishes into the system. It's completely anonymous. And then other employees can go ahead and grant those wishes. And they're granting wishes not based off of who the people are, because they don't know the people. They can't see their names or their departments. But they're really connecting with those people based off of what their wish is. Sometimes wishes are really simple. And we've had wishes like, I wish a Starbucks Frappuccino would randomly appear on my desk tomorrow morning. And employees will help facilitate that. But sometimes wishes are a little more complicated, and we've had things like I'm having trouble affording diapers for my child. Employees will get together and supply diapers. And then Zappos has a separate fund to grant wishes that are a little harder to grant for the average employee, mainly because of expense. So some of those, we've had an employee who made a wish, said that her father needed new hearing aids because he could no longer work, and the hearing aids were about $5,000. So Zappos paid for her father to get the new hearing aids so he could continue to support his family. We had another employee who said that his greatest wish for him and his daughter was to become American citizens. And so Zappos paid for all of the lawyers and legal fees and everything that is involved in trying to gain citizenship. And now that employee and his daughter are officially U.S. citizens. Next slide. Step number 6 is to build your team. We have a saying at Zappos, which is hire slowly, fire quickly. And this is very different than normal companies. Normal companies, you hire as quickly as you can because you need somebody to do that work. So you're looking for a warm body. And then when you realize that that employee isn't a fit, you go to HR and they ask you a million questions, and it takes you 6 months, a year, 2 years to get rid of that employee. At Zappos, we want to spend a really long time trying to get to know you before we actually extend an offer. The average entry-level position can sit in our pipeline for 3 months through interviews and such before they're offered a job. And then once we figure out for whatever reason that you're not a fit for our organization, we want to move you out as quickly as possible. And some people ask us, well, isn't that risky to kind of fire people willy-nilly? And we're definitely not firing people willy-nilly. We also believe that termination should never be a surprise. But at the end of the day, we feel that the risk of keeping a bad employee far outweighs the risk of letting them go. Next slide. Step number 7 is to think long-term. Think about repeat customers. On any given day, 75% of our business comes from repeat customers, so it's really important that we provide great customer service and do everything we can to keep them coming back. Remember, there's no get-rich-quick formula. As I said, Zappos was not profitable for 7 years, and we were actually on the verge of closing up. Our employees at one point were asked to give up pay in exchange for stock just to keep the company afloat. And there were many times where we sat in a room and said, which vendor are we going to pay, because we cannot pay all of these people. So overnight successes are really years in the making. All right, next slide. So culture do for a company? I mentioned earlier, I talked a little bit about Amazon. We were officially acquired by Amazon in 2009. The value at the time of closing was $1.2 billion. We made almost nothing for the beginning of our time as a company. We closed out 2008 at just over $1 billion. Now that our numbers are rolled up into Amazon, we're not allowed to disclose how much we make per year, but just know that we're growing and we're well over $1 billion. All right, next slide. Before I open it up to questions, I wanted to tell you a story about how this shows up in our office every day, all the stuff I've talked to you about, hiring good people and allowing them to make decisions on behalf of your company. So this story actually has to do with a customer called us and wanted to return a pair of shoes. If you've ever returned shoes to Zappos, it's really easy. You just print a return label, tape it to the box, take it to your UPS store, and off it goes. So this woman had called us and she said she needed to return a pair of shoes. She had purchased them for her mother, and unfortunately her mother had passed away before she got a chance to wear them. So the rep helped her with the call and thought to himself, like, well, she probably has better things to do than to go to a UPS store to return these shoes. So he sent UPS right to her door. And every time an employee does that, it costs the company about $10 or $15 to have a UPS driver go right to your house to pick up the package. But it's not something we manage. Employees are allowed to use it as much or as little as they deem necessary. So he sent UPS to her door. The customer was happy. She hung up the phone. After he was off the call, he went to his supervisor and he said, I just talked to this customer and her mother just passed away, and I think we should send her flowers. And his supervisor was like, well, we've never sent flowers to a customer before, but okay, we'll go ahead and send her flowers. And so we did. And what we couldn't have known at the time was that this woman, she had a blog, and this blog was read by maybe 3 or 4 people, probably her close relatives. But she had a blog nonetheless, and she wrote a beautiful story about Zappos and how we sent UPS to her, and then the next day there was a knock at her door, and there was a beautiful arrangement of flowers, and the card read, our thoughts and prayers are with you, love the Zappos.com family. And she went on to write about how she felt like she had finally interacted with a company that was run by an actual person and not by a bunch of robots reading from a script, and that she found a company that she felt actually had a heart, and she was a loyal customer for life. And what we also couldn't have known was a few months later there was a reporter out of New York who was trying to write a story about Zappos. He was trying to write a story that had never been written before, which isn't easy to do or well documented. So it's a bit a story called Zappos Sends You Flowers. And to date, that woman's blog has had over 80,000 hits. That's 80,000 positive impressions with our brand. So if there's any marketing people out there, we spent about $75, 80,000 positive impressions. It's pretty good ROI. And for Zappos, our kind of point, the moral of the story is you can spend a lot of time trying to plan the perfect media strategy, and you're also going to spend a lot of money planning the perfect media strategy, and sometimes it'll work, most of the time it'll fail, but if you plan in your people and you spend time devoting to the employees that actually work for you, that they will that will work for you 100% of the time. So next slide. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I wanted to leave you guys with some information. So if you have any questions, comments, or ever need anything, you can email me directly at jamie@zappos.com. And if you'd like a copy of this presentation, again, feel free to email me. If you're going to be in Las Vegas, we would love to show you around our office. And it's a perfect business reason to come to Las Vegas to tour Zappos, so put that on your list. And then, unfortunately, we were all out of culture books, and our the next edition doesn't come out until July. But if you happen to remember that you want a culture book in July and you drop me an email, we will ship one off to you at no charge. So that's it from me. We're going to move on to questions now.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to get the Q&A going. Well, we try to get the other side of the video going so you can see everyone. So, do you have any questions?
Hi, Jamie. Is the sound working? Yeah. So after Zappos was acquired by Amazon, was there any attempt to change the culture to be more profit driven, or were they kind of totally into that? And because it seems like a lot of the things cost Zappos a lot of money.
Yeah, they do. Now I can see myself 3 times on my screen. Just so when Amazon purchased us, we did a really interesting deal with them. So Tony, now I can see you guys. Hello. Tony did a deal where it was completely hands off. So so Amazon is our parent. We're allowed to take whatever we want from them, but they don't force anything on us. There's not a whole lot of interaction day to day with Amazon. There's no signage that they're even part of us in our company. So very little has changed. The stuff that's changed the most is just being part of a publicly traded company. So there's things we're not allowed to say. We get emails now about trading stocks that we never had to look at before. So budgeting is a little more complicated, but outside of that, it's not much has changed. Any other questions?
Hi, my question's pretty generic, but other than just a little bit of like running low on budget, what other big obstacles did Zappos like come across in the creation of it?
I mean, we've made a million mistakes. Like marketing is a big one. One of the things we think is the reason we survived the dot-com bubble was that we didn't have a huge amount of investment, and so we didn't have a whole lot of money to make big mistakes with. But one big mistake that we made in the beginning is we spent $25,000 to take out a sign at Giants Stadium, since we were located in the Bay Area, and we acquired one customer from that. So I don't think that customer has still to this day spent $25,000. So that was an expensive mistake. We also thought it would be really, like, we sell shoes, like we should give free socks with every pair of shoes that customers buy. But the only problem with that was we would mail the socks, and most of our shoes were being drop shipped. So the socks would get to you like within 2 days, but your shoes would take 3 weeks to get to you. Or if you ordered sandals and we're like, here's a black pair of dress socks, it was, we did a lot of stupid things like that.
I actually have another question. How do you compare or compete with companies like JustFab and all those new shoe sites that do like, where you have to like buy a pair of shoes like every month and everything?
Mm-hmm. We don't actually have a strategy or anything where we're trying to compete with them. We really look at it like we're in a whole different market. Those companies tend to private label their shoes, so they're producing their own shoes. We sell brands. So, yeah, we're not. I'm sure someone in the company is looking at it, but it's not something we talk about or are extremely concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
Do you guys have any questions about, I don't know, have you read about Downtown Project and our work to develop a tech scene in Las Vegas? Anybody read about that? Well, I'm told that you're all entrepreneurs, and it's but Downtown Project created a $350 million fund. So this is Tony's personal money he's put in. $50 million is going into education, $50 million into small business, $200 million is into real estate acquisition and development, and then the last $50 million goes into tech startups. So we are actively investing in tech startups through Vegas Tech Fund, and so just throwing that out there. If Las Vegas seems interesting, we have a pretty lively tech scene that's sprouted up over the last couple of years.
What would you say was the biggest thing you learned from working with Tony?
Oh my gosh. So Tony is one of the most interesting people I've ever met, and I've known him a really long time. I've known him for like 9 years, and he has very little ability to see how strongly he affects people. So he walks into a room and he makes one statement, and then he walks out, and he doesn't see the aftermath. It's like a nuclear bomb went off and there's like bodies everywhere just because of one statement he made. And a funny story about that is he was a fan. He heard about this company and he was a fan of the company, and so he asked the founders if like he could meet them. And so they're like, "You want to meet us?" Like, sure. So we all flew down to the LA area and met with the founders, and they brought one of their employees who was like a total, like he just geeked out over Tony. So this employee is just like in the room, like so excited that Tony, and out of nowhere, Tony said, "So how much to buy your company?" And that was it. Like bomb went off, bodies everywhere. Like the founder was like, we need to get this employee out of the room. So I don't know. He does stuff like that all the time. But I guess the one thing I've learned from him is to question everything. Tony's best and most frequently asked question is why. And I promise you, if you ask why enough, the reasons you think you're doing something will change. And so when we say we need to, I don't know, make a policy about X, and he'll say why, and then we say, well, this is what's happening, and he'll say why again, and he keeps saying why until we get to the most simplest version, and then he'll say, okay, fix that. And he has a way of making everything very simplistic. Any other questions?
There we go.
What are some like interview questions that you ask? Like, do you throw in brain teasers and stuff like that?
Do we throw in brain teasers? No, our questions are a mix of like very traditional, tell me about a time you received great customer service and what it meant to you. And then the other ones, like I mentioned, how weird are you? One of my favorite ones that we ask is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky do you consider yourself? And Tony always says, like, we don't want to hire unlucky people, but there's actually science behind it that they did research where they asked people this question on a scale of 1 to 10, how lucky do you consider yourself? 1, like 10 being, I don't know why, but good things always seem to happen to me, and 1, I don't know why, but bad things always seem to happen to me. And they sent these people in a room, and they said, count the number of pictures in this newspaper. And what they noticed is that people that were lower on the lucky scale, they don't know why, but bad things seem to happen to them, they would go in the room and they would do exactly what they were asked to do, and they would count 1, 2, 3, and then they would go up to the window and say there's 47 pictures, and they would leave. But the people that said, I don't know why, good things always seem to happen to me, they were like the 8, 9s, and 10s of the world. They would go into the same room with the same newspaper, given the same task, and they would start counting 1, 2, 3, but very quickly they would realize that under all the pictures, it said, stop counting, there's 47 pictures, collect $100 from the window. And so what they found is that you're not inherently lucky or unlucky, but people who perceive themselves to be lucky are more open to opportunities and look outside just the task at hand. So those are the type of people we're trying to hire.
This is Matt. I remember when you came out to Cybercritters, you talked about some unique team building activities you do, like the Oreo eating contest. I thought maybe you could share some of those.
Yeah, we do a lot of different team building. One of the rules is managers have to spend 10 to 20% of their time outside the office doing non-work related stuff with their team. So we get really creative. We've done the Oreo cookie eating competition. Believe it or not, was one of the most intense things I'd ever seen at Zappos. And that was just a random event we did to bring people together. We do random parades for team building, like depending on the department. Some teams go out and go hiking, some do charity events. My team, there's a lot of girls on my team, so we tend to like paint nails and do real girly stuff. The guys on my team are not so thrilled with that. Kind of awkward to stare.
Try.
So I was just wondering, what are the proportions of people, like you have people doing customer service, and then there's, I'm guessing it's like tons of logistics, but then what kind of like technology How much like technology are you working on, or like improving your company through technology?
So I don't know what the exact figures are. I know the call center is roughly 45% of our company. We have a really large merchandising team. Those are our buyers, our assistant buyers. And then our tech team, I believe, is the third largest department. Tech talent is really hard to find, so we are always looking for more people to join our team. We're doing an Amazon integration, so tech is not my world. It's called SuperCloud, and we're moving over to the Amazon platform because their technology is so far more advanced than our own. So most of our tech team is fully just working on the integration, and then our California office in the Bay Area is just a tech team that focuses on innovation. So they are literally allowed to create whatever they want and see if it'll work.
Just wondering if you have any advice to us as students still while we're at Penn State, any opportunities we should take advantage of or resources we should use? I don't know how familiar you are with Penn State, so I don't know. Regular university.
Yeah. I know it's going to sound really sad, but is it sad that I'm most familiar with you guys because of the Ghost Hunter team that came out of there?
No, we're proud of that.
I don't know if they're on TV anymore, but I used to love that.
It was on like A&E. It was great.
Yeah. Advice I have. I don't know. I have life advice for you guys more than business advice. Life advice is to take advantage of every opportunity you have, because there will, when you're done with school, obviously you want to jump in and get as highest paying job as possible, but I say stick with a job that you're passionate about, or join a startup while you can, because eventually you're going to get married and you're going to have kids and you're going to have lots of debt, and there's not going to ever be the opportunity again to just kind of live a very simple life and focus all of your energy on building something. So do it while you can.
I think too, when you're at Cybercraze, you mentioned about writing your job description a long time ago, and how that went. Share that story. I think that's good.
So I worked in HR for most of my career at Zappos, and just over 3 years ago, Tony came to me and said, "Why don't you leave HR and come work for me directly?" And I was like, "Well, what would I do?" And he said, "Write a job description of everything you love and nothing you don't." And so I was like, okay. So I wrote this amazing job description and got it all ready, and I started, and the very next day we announced that we were relocating our headquarters to downtown Las Vegas. So I tucked my job description away, and I worked on all of the kind of stuff that came out of that announcement, and I've never looked at that job description again. So. Another funny thing is when I left HR, I said, there's two things I never want to do. I don't want to have direct reports anymore, and I don't want to do events. 3 years later, I have 27 direct reports in, 6 different areas, and one of the areas is all company events. So I just can't escape it.
That's great. Well, thanks, Jimmy, so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
And we really appreciate it. Went really well.
Bye.